Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will continue our discussion of Chapter 2 of Observing the Craft by Andrew Hammer.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our usual cast of characters. We have Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth from King Solomon Lodge number 60 in Auburn, Washington. I'm Matt Appel, and I'm a member of Mill Creek number 243 in Montlake Terrace, Washington. And we have our Canadian contingent. We have Worshipful Brother Jarrod Dunham, who's a member of Penticton number 147 in Penticton, British Columbia. And Worshipful Brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles number 153 in Kelowna, British Columbia. So as we said in our last episode, we were sort of going to divide Chapter 2 in half, roughly about the start of page 13 on my edition of the book, where he sort of departs from what is observant and transfers into, for lack of a better term, what is not observant, what he thinks is sort of in conflict in some ways with this observance. So, I mean, the first paragraph where we're beginning this conversation is, to begin that explanation, I want to state something very clearly that we have not up to now addressed. Observing the craft begins and ends with symbolic blue lodge. This is because Freemasonry itself begins and ends with a symbolic lodge. So, I see a reaction of enthusiasm from Jarrod over there.
As Jarrod famously quoted, "Yep, end of the show."
Yep. Roll credits. So, what is do you have thoughts other than "yup," Jarrod? Or have you?
Oh no, it's exactly. Well, this is the point that I was trying to make. Is that it's the lodge.
Say it once again, one more time.
Lodge. Does it sound like it should be a ringtone now?
Careful. I bet you David knows how to do that.
It's going to be a little more high pitch, but
the lodge.
Oh wait, I don't have to change it. Yeah, I mean, he goes on to say at the bottom, even the United Grand Lodge of England, in its statement of the merger of the lodges, said that. I mean, how much more black and white can you get? And on that note, have a good night. No.
There we go. We're done. And that concludes it. No,
it was interesting. It was interesting about the Royal Arch piece. And I know that there was a whole controversy about that, but
and I've always wondered about when they talk, because they talk about the Royal Arch. Are we talking about the object, the Royal Arch, or are we talking about the degree of the Royal Arch? Because we don't know.
Cue the trumpet. Wah, wah, wah.
I don't know why. What?
Well, in here, he refers to it as including the Supreme Order of the Holy Royal Arch.
Yeah, he says that it's the Royal Arch is the accomplishment, the completion of the Master Mason degree. It's not a degree itself,
right?
So it's more of a title or a capstone, if you will.
Ooh,
which is
you like that?
Caused much controversy in the wearing of jewels, but that's a whole other episode or two.
And that's why it's a controversy.
Exactly.
So I actually want to take a quick survey. So I know I'm a member of my Blue Lodge and of Scottish Rite, and I know Stephen's a member of Scottish Rite also. Are you a member of any other bodies other than Scottish Rite in your lodge?
No.
David?
I'm a Scottish Rite Mason. I technically am a Royal Archman, if that's the term. I've just never made my mark and have not advanced beyond the Royal Arch degrees.
Jarrod? So for those who aren't watching,
he politely said no. For those that can't hear,
that he was not a member of others.
No, I am not a member of anything other than the Blue Lodge. Never have been, never will be.
And
because I agree with this. I agree that Freemasonry begins and ends with the Blue Lodge, and that everything else is I don't have a polite word for it, so I will just say it is not.
I see. All right.
So I started reading chapter 3 because I'm an overachiever, so I started reading it, and I started thinking to myself, so there are, in theory, one could, he says, if he doesn't say this exactly, he says something very similar along the lines of, one could study masonry and the various aspects of it, and there's always another layer, there's always another symbol, there's always more to be gained from it. And I agree with that. So if one were drawing a curve and it was going to ascend forever, but the slope is sort of dying off there, right? And when you first start out, you're gaining more and more from from masonry, and whatever you get in the first, even if it's just this, there's this, it's a pair of compasses, and the next symbol of it is that, stay within due bounds and that sort of stuff. Okay, so that level, you're getting you're on a steep upslope there. But by the time you've been in for 20 years, like some of us, the not that it's flat, but you're gaining less over time. The effort you put in is increasing per unit of whatever improvementness that you're getting out of masonry. And I found myself wondering, and I can see both sides of this coin, and I know what Jarrod's going to say, or at least I think I do. But the as one is in Blue Lodge and one is approaching that point where it's, the curve is flattening, again, not flat, but getting flatter, that if joining whatever Royal Arch or Scottish Rite or whatever, if one can then add a new curve onto that curve. I'm making great, by the way, hand gestures. If you're just listening to this and can't see me, it totally makes more sense with the hand gestures. That if you're not starting to go up again on a new curve that's sort of building on that curve and gaining more out of masonry overall. And like I said, I can see both sides of that argument, but that's sort of where I came up with, is whatever, learning something about Royal Arch, does that actually improve my understanding of myself and the world, even if it's not strictly craft masonry or Blue Lodge masonry?
I think, like he says in the book, though, are those orders actually teaching you anything more? Some maybe, but I think if you find, in most cases, it's as bad or worse than the Blue Lodge, the symbolic lodge, where they go and they have their meeting. They have the degrees, and get the big plume, or you get the round, the cylindrical hat. That was tough.
My wife calls it a bellhop hat.
Yes. And then they have their meeting, and what are they really doing in their meetings? Are they really providing any other education or anything better than Blue Lodge? No.
And, no, hold on. The argument can be made that you don't necessarily, to gain more enlightenment, need to do anything Masonic to gain it. I'm going to use an example because it's me and it's the only one I have with historic fencing, is that I have actually found correlations between the mathematical theory of Renaissance fencing ties into the Masonic teachings on the 7 liberal arts. So anything that, I think the argument is that you can gain more enlightenment. It doesn't necessarily have to be Masonic in nature for it to be enlightenment. And as he says, that sometimes the quote unquote higher orders in Freemasonry aren't actually giving you anything more. They're just giving you more.
Yeah, it says here, in the quotes, the greater number of these modern rites and degrees have been arranged to suit the views and preconceived ideas of clever visionary ritualists, and are but the mere conceit of their concoctors, nearly equally meaningless and historically untrue. So, again, that goes back to everything starts with the lodge and ends with the Blue Lodge, right?
Plus, that's not Andrew Hammer writing that. That's someone else.
Right.
That needs
that's somebody else?
It was
Yeah,
it
okay.
was a it was like the head
Wallace or something, wasn't
called
it?
the top person in the Knights Templar.
James Hugan or
Yeah, about 100
Right.
Moore or Moore, McLeod Moore.
Yeah.
But so going back to the previous show, who everybody should watch, Matt alluded that if we don't need to have, let's see, if we can get enlightened at this other meeting, why do we need Blue Lodge then? If we can become enlightened outside of the Observant Lodge, then why do we need the Observant Lodge? Because that's what I thought I heard you say, Jared. Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought you said we can go to these meetings and become enlightened other than Masonically. Then why do we need to have the Observant Lodges to be enlightened?
Well, I think, okay, I guess the question is that I mean, we know there are organizations that do similar stuff. But
sure.
Like, I mean, I can go and I can read a bunch of books and I can seek enlightenment that way. But that's me. It's not about I mean, it's about doing better as the individual, but coming together as a group to do it.
Is it that because hopefully the Observant Lodge is focused on that task?
Yeah.
And where the other ones aren't necessarily, it's more about the higher numbers and higher getting rid of the costumes and that kind of thing, maybe, and not so much about the enlightenment. Although, I in my last meeting, there was a ceremony that they did that was, I'll bet it would have been really cool if I could pay attention, but I couldn't pay attention because they were misread. They weren't even have it memorized, and they weren't in any kind of costume, and it was being misread, and it was. I thought to myself, this is why I don't come to these meetings.
Right, it was not conducive for you to get into a state of mind to learn from it.
Absolutely.
And that's why proper focus on craftsmanship is important.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead into the other chapter because it goes into it better. But I think once again, I'm putting words in his mouth, but I think the part of the reason you get is that the focus sometimes tends to be too much on doing anything other than lodge. I mean, I know that when I was master, my biggest complaint was the fact that whenever you tried to organize something, there was always half your lodge saying, "No, I can't because I've got X meeting with a pendant body." And I'm like, well, it's no wonder our lodge closed.
So let me ask, this may pull out of, again, our previous show, but I think the section quote talks about that there are quarries or lodges become filled with idlers who want the benefits of being called craftsmen. There's the word, without actually doing or knowing how to do the work. And so I underline knowing how. And so I got to go back to the idea that maybe, especially those that were brought into Masonry and have succumbed to the normalization of socializing and that kind of stuff, and not the idea of observance, have they lost or were never taught how to be observant? And so those of us that want to have a focus on observance need to be able to teach them or remind them. They probably did join, some of them, with an intention of observance, and then saw that it wasn't and were acceptant of it. I know I would probably put myself in that category. And in Matt's non-visual diagram of enlightenment education, I would say, yeah, my first 3 degrees, it was like a rocket. I didn't know what was going on. And I'll admit that I thought a lot of it was true and not just allegorical. And naivete. And then, yeah, I think my education, if you will, dropped off and leveled out because I didn't realize there was more. But now, 15 years later, especially with this show and other things that I'm involved with, I have had a new ignition of interest to learn more. And so I think it may not be the rocket ship that the first 3 degrees were, but it's certainly escalating. Not due to the other orders, though.
Sorry. I jumped in.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I was going to say, and wouldn't it be great if you actually found a lodge of like-minded people? that you could do that with, and you weren't fighting against the tide to get everyone to change.
And that's the thing is, when I talk to most of our members, they're not fighting. They don't know how. I guess that's why I pointed that out, is that they're without actually doing or knowing how to do any of the work. And so I think a lot of, especially we have a lot of new guys, newer Masons, and I think a couple of them have said, gosh, I'm not sure this is what I thought it was going to be, even after we do 6 steps, even after we do all the stuff. But I think we're trying to become more observant but also for me, it's a balance between observance and quality socialization and connection with your brothers.
But you socialize after lodge.
True. Exactly.
So there shouldn't be a fine balance. It should just be once again a 24 gauge thing of time.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You devote the time to the lodge, and then afterwards is once you've done the lodge, you devote your time to socializing.
Yeah.
It's the socializing in lodge that I find distracting.
What, the grumpy past masters talking on the sidelines? You don't like
everyone talking on the side.
You're muted, Steve.
Steven, unmute yourself.
That drives me nuts. Nothing drives me crazier than having the mumbling on the side. When somebody is trying to do their work, be quiet and let them do it. I tell you, right? Like, it's so disrespectful.
So can I jump ahead a little bit to the end of the chapter? I really want to read this.
Sure.
Do we have time? Because I want to get to his final point on what is observance. Because I think we've touched on it, but I want to hear other people's opinions of this. So at the end of the chapter, my page 29, I'm just going to read the parts that I've highlighted. He comes to the established definition of Masonic observance: doing everything we do to the highest standard possible, seated firmly within the symbolic lodge as a total and complete expression of the craft, making ourselves better as individuals through a determined pursuit of spiritual and intellectual enlightenment, of seeking to unite men of every country, sect, and opinion in a quest for personal and societal progress.
If that isn't the mission statement of your lodge, it should be, right?
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think that I read that. I didn't underline it initially because I thought, well, that's just the whole chapter in a synopsized in a paragraph.
Yeah.
Can I get an amen? Yeah. Right. No, that's exactly what I thought when I read that.
I think for me, what people find the hardest is the determined pursuit of spiritual and intellectual enlightenment, because that sounds like work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and why do we use the term craftsman? Why do we wear aprons? Why do we talk about quarries and
and it has to be more than just when you show up that one night a month.
Oh, you get to go only once a month?
My lodge only meets once a month.
Oh yeah, you only go to your lodge?
It's so less frustrating if I just go to my lodge.
And you're going to become the district education officer.
I'm going to become but that's the thing is that, once again, focus on your lodge. When your lodge is, this is the other thing is that it's great if you want to be social and go to other lodges, but it doesn't make you a better Mason.
True.
But if your lodge could do with having more meetings, you should be focusing on trying to convince your lodge to have more meetings.
So traveling to another observant lodge wouldn't be.
If you traveling to another, if you can find one.
Well, there's a list.
Yeah. But it's going to see how they do it and bringing it back to your lodge. The work needs to be the whole point. The work needs to be done in your lodge.
Yeah. So traveling is purely a social action.
Yeah.
Aren't you bringing out? Let's say they're not as observant as they could be. Are you not showing them the light, if you will?
No, because you're a visitor. You're not doing any of their work for them.
Well, depending on
When
the
they
lodge.
come to your
Depending on the
lodge,
you might
then
be.
you're showing them the light. Having that, they should, because that's the thing is that if you're not going to show them the light unless they come and see you do it. If your lodge is following observance.
So
I feel like we're drinking the Kool-Aid here.
How can we be the example to society if they can't come into our lodge and see us do the work?
They being
society.
We're not talking about.
Well, I mean, if you're saying that lodge isn't, if the traveling to that lodge is not an observant action to show our who we are, to express the outward opinion and actions of who we are as an observant Mason, part of an observant lodge, hopefully, if that's not an observant action to do that, then how can we say that we're observant to the society?
Well, you're talking about two different things, because when you go to another lodge, how would you show them?
Dress properly, act accordingly. Those are two things immediately.
Yes.
Just come to mind. If anybody asks you about something, try to provide wholesome instruction. Give them a copy of the book.
Do you have a moment to talk about? have you heard of our author Andrew Hammer?
Come over to supper, and they put up a whiteboard in the corner.
My name is Brother Appel.
I think your work would be better done visiting with people rather than visiting with lodges. If you know that if there's a brother in your district who is sort of like mind, go for coffee. Talk to them then. I honestly think the work is better. Like getting people to come, if you have an observant lodge and a lodge that follows these principles and is doing the work, I think people would get more by coming to your lodge, watching your installation.
Well, sure,
because everyone goes to visit for installations because we all help out with the work. Like that would be one. District. Do you guys do something special when your district deputy visits a lodge? Do you have official visits?
Yes.
So that's so cases where lodge brothers from other lodges would normally come to because there's something special happening. Degree nights, I think you would have a better chance of converting. Oh no, I'm not converting. That's the wrong word. Of showing people by having them come to your lodge, but I don't think necessarily going to someone else's lodge is going to do much. That's just my opinion. I may be wrong.
Well, yeah, you're not going to bring a jug of Kool-Aid with you, but again, the idea of being the example. I thought he says it in the book though, that's what we're supposed to do with society, and so couldn't we extend that to a fellow lodge?
But he also states that allowing lodges to be different than observant is okay too.
Yes.
See, now you got my answer.
Do any of us think so? The whole point of this chapter. Wow, lost my brain there for a second. The whole point of this chapter is to define observance. And given that he's got the whole rest of the book to talk about it, so I'm not saying that we know everything that is on this brother's mind. But would you guys say that your lodges that you attend or are members of are observant in this sense, that are doing everything to the best of their abilities and that sort of thing?
Honestly, truly,
no. Lie to me. Make it pretty.
Well, no. Honestly, no. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to say no. We're not. Everyone wants to think that theirs is the best lodge, but I would no.
Yeah, I got to agree with Jarrod on that one. Everybody would agree, love to say that they have the best lodge, and I would love it if my lodge was an observant lodge. But I can say that I do believe there are a couple of brothers in my lodge that do their best to be observant according to the definitions so far.
Well, wait with bated breath till chapter 8 the Observant Lodge.
I haven't read that far ahead. So yeah, I mean, I just to express my opinion, I would agree with the two of you guys that I don't know that I don't see my lodge as being observant by these standards.
Well, I would agree with that, and I may offend some guys that are listening to this in my own district. There is a lodge in our district that's on the list of observant lodges, and there are aspects that they strive to do well in, and there's other things that I think, what in the world are they doing? Oh, is that new ritual or what? But I also have to think, hey, we're human. We're not, nobody's perfect. They are doing the best they can. But does that mean that our lodge isn't doing the best that it can? And so when I would say, are we observant? Well, in many aspects, yes. If you had a list of 10 things or 8 things, and we could probably check off 6 or 7 of them. But are we doing it the same way as this other lodge that's on the list of observant lodges? No, necessarily, because they're different than we are. But they get to call themselves observant. We don't. So it's a tough answer.
So I got a question, and this is one. So
with only 2 minutes left.
Okay, well, here's a quick one then. If your lodge isn't observant, you would want to be observant, and there are other brothers in your district area that would want to try, would you go about trying to start another lodge to do this?
I would never do something like that.
I've actually posed that question to myself, and I thought, no, I think I would try and see if I can get my lodge to become observant, because I believe that membership in my lodge, though they haven't had the definition enlightenment, would agree that on the principles and what an observant lodge is. So I think I would put the effort there into seeing if my lodge could become that observant lodge. And if not, I might be compelled to go through the process of beginning an observant lodge.
I apologize. I can't quote the exact show number, but we've had our friend Zane McKeon, very worshipful brother, Zane McKeon on, and their lodge, Verity Lodge in Kent, is the lodge I'm speaking of. And I'm pretty sure we have a show where he talks about their transition from where they were to where they are now. And it's been a rough and rugged road for them to transition from the way their lodge used to be until the way it is now. And so it was not observant previously. And they may not consider themselves truly observant, but they're on the list. I mean, they're not a TO lodge for sure. And they're maybe not, it's not like they have everybody gets a copy of the book, but they certainly do everything they can. And I think a lot of it came from his reading, Zane's reading of that. And he helped the lodge transition and found brothers that were interested in that idea and has cultured and nurtured that idea and continues to in that lodge. And so as new Masons come in, that's the new culture, and it's accepted. And so the idea of not being able to transition a lodge to be more observant or to be observant, I think it can happen. I've seen it happen. But I do like the idea of a new lodge.
Well, that is very reassuring that it can happen.
It's hard work. They've been at it for, I would say, 10 years. And so it didn't happen overnight for sure. And there were some hard feelings over the years of the way some of the brothers wanted to take the lodge and some of the other brothers didn't. And so there was a parting of ways, which ended up being good for them because those that didn't want to be observant, I think he says it in the book, right? That those A return to or focus on observance may be easy for some, hard for others, and impossible for the rest. And those that were impossible said, we don't agree with this. Some stood up and lodged, some wrote letters. It was kind of a crazy time. But magically they're not around. Anyway. Kind of a depressing idea to
and that lodge and that lodge is now consistent in their efforts to be an observant lodge.
Yeah, I would say so.
Excellent.
And they're continuing. I believe they're continuing to enhance that experience with as much as they can. There are a lot of new Masons in there, and so they struggle somewhat with some aspects of things, but I think they're doing their best. And that's ultimately what can we ask for? Do your best.
I can't wait to get to chapter 8 and figure out how to do that.
So with that, look into the future. We again encourage you all to read the book and to let us know your opinions of the book and of our if you will, incessant yammering on the on the topic. I guess that's about all we have for the evening. So on behalf of David and Jarrod and Stephen and myself, we thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.